Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. I'm Assemblymember Robert Rodriguez, representing the 68th Assembly District, East Harlem, El Barrio, and parts of the Upper East Side. And thank you for being here at Manhattan Neighborhood Network's Represent NYC, our small business episode. So today we are discussing the need to address the dire situation of local small businesses that are struggling to stay open and that have been devastated by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Small Business Grants Program that was created by New York State and is currently being administered by the Empire State Development Corporation are providing financial assistance to help small businesses keep their doors open. And as the Empire State Development staff continue to verify the information that's being provided to ensure that applicants are eligible and then quickly work to disperse those funds, I want to thank Rafael Salaberrios, who's the Senior Vice President for Capital Access at Empire State Development, for being here with us. And it's important that we talk a little bit about what this program is, the size of the program. Currently, it's $800 million. And Ray, you can correct me if that number is inaccurate, but it is a substantial program to help small businesses fill the gaps that we know were created by COVID-19. So there have been some significant changes to the program since we first approved it and launched it in June. So I'm going to allow Ray to speak a little bit about that. But I want folks to know that this entire process has been geared towards trying to support small businesses. For profit independent arts and cultural institutions are also eligible. And the intent of this program was to help fill in for the loss of businesses, the loss of revenue and receipts, so that folks can pay their rent, get caught up on utilities, help fill some of those losses that were received during the COVID-19 pandemic. So, with that, I want to turn it over to Ray to talk a little bit about what this program is, the timeline for how it's rolled out, and really what has to happen for small businesses to be able to participate.
Well, thank you, Senator. It's my absolute pleasure of being here. I'm very excited about how the program is going, and I just want to delve in a few minutes, some particulars about the program that might be helpful to the audience as they decide whether to apply or not to apply. So the idea of the Small Business Pandemic Recovery Grant Program was created to provide flexible grants to assist currently viable small businesses throughout the state, right? And then micro businesses, for-profit, and independent arts and cultural organizations also. So the idea was that these organizations have experienced economic hardship directly due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we go to the idea, okay, well, who's eligible, right? And we talked about eligibility is such an important factor, but we've cast a wide net on eligibility. I think the Assemblymember is correct in that we started one way, and we started looking at small businesses with revenues of $500,000 or less. And these were micro businesses that we felt were overlooked in other programs. The Paycheck Protection Program, for instance, there was enough data to show that if you had revenues less than $500,000, it was highly unlikely you were going to get a paycheck protection loan. Right? The banks just weren't interested in helping you. So what we did, we started with that market there. We started focusing on small businesses. The idea was we still required you to be viable. So you had to have your business started before March 1 of 2019. That was key. And then viability was, well, we want to make sure that you had some profits prior to 2019. It could have been just $1. As long as you showed some profitability, you were viable. Now we're asking you, okay, well, what do we need? How do we prove that you need a grant? We asked for you to submit your 2019 and 2020 tax returns. And what we were going to look to see if you had incurred a loss of 25% or more between 2019 and 2020. If that was true, you move to the next level. Now we want to prove viability, that you're still in business. And the simplest way is show us a credit card bill or Con Edison bill, some bill with the name of your business and the address. You show us that. Next step is your identification. Prove to us who you are, a copy of your driver's license. So there you have basically what we look for to get a grant. And it's relatively simple. We have to make sure that these folks, these the amounts of the grants were measurable to the small business. We want to give you money to help pay your bills, right? So we look at your expenses and say, okay, if you have revenues up to 500,000, you can get a grant up to 50,000. So it's like, oh, that's good. I mean, you're $500,000 revenue company, you get a grant of 50,000, you're good to go. Now what we did is that because we have pretty much gone through a lot of applications for folks with 500,000 or less in revenue, we've expanded the eligibility to now $2.5 million or less. So now companies have revenues anywhere between 25,000 and $2.5 million, they're eligible to apply. Now the numbers I'm gonna give you change every day, every moment. At this point, last time I checked, we've issued over 3,000 grants, totaling about $79 million to small businesses. And these are small businesses, again, 500,000 revenue or less. We have over 70 technical assistance providers throughout the state ready to help. You can go to the office, you can call up, we're doing webinars. If you're in New York City, any small business development center, any entrepreneurial assistance center, they're eligible, so you can go to get assistance.
Where do they find the list of the technical assistance providers?
Your best bet is to go to the ESD website, Empire State Development, look at pandemic relief programs, and all the details of the program will be on our website. The website also will lead you directly to the Lendistry website, where you get the information in 12 different languages in case English is your primary language. The issue now is, if I were to tell folks what they need to do to make sure they get a grant and get it quickly, it's about submitting the documentation with your application. You need to submit your 2 years tax returns. You need to submit a bill, something to show us that you are still in operations. So it could be your current lease. It could be a tax bill. It could be your credit card bill. It could be anything that you have that proves that you're still in operation, and your driver's license, some form of New York State identification or federal ID acceptable to prove to us who you are. Once they submit the documentation, getting through the queue is relatively easy. It is getting the documentation. When a small business applies, he's going to have an application number and the ability to track his application, right? And you can call the Lendistry hotline number, which will give you the opportunity to talk to a Lendistry staff member and discuss how do you go about, where am I, what's the status. And so it's really a relatively easy process. It's just understanding that we have to navigate the process like anything else we do.
And one of the things that's important is that we're not running out of money, right? So far, if we've got 3,000 grants, 75 million dispersed, there's a significant amount of capacity for us to continue to provide grants. I think what you're saying and what you're encouraging people to do is to submit in the process, to participate, to get the documentation that's there. Let's talk about some of the barriers or things that might be impeding some of our small businesses. One question that I think we've gotten frequently is, do you have to be documented? Do you have to be a documented person to submit for a claim and participate in the program?
Your business has to be documented, yes.
But not your citizenship or status.
No, but your business has to be documented, exactly. And you have to be able to prove identity.
Yes, identity, but not necessarily citizenship. So for many of our, our brothers and sisters who, do not have citizenship, but who are business owners, particularly in places like East Harlem and Queens, and different places, who are still participating in the system, they still can participate in this program, right?
Absolutely. And we encourage them to participate, as the program really was set up for individuals that you just mentioned. It's really set up for that really micro business that has difficulty accessing credit through any other venue.
Great. Now let's talk a little bit about the key requirements. Proof of business organization and location, proof of ownership and employees, those kind of things. What's the easiest way to show that? Is it just your incorporation? Are you good with that? Is that enough? Or is there something else that's required, in addition to the tax returns? We want to kind of break down the myth that, it's a lot that's required.
What is required is what we believe are documents that every small business owner should have in order to do business, right? If you are a sole proprietor, let's dig down into this. If I am a sole proprietor and I am doing business in New York State, I have to be licensed in New York State to do that business. You have to have the license. If you don't have the license, you have to prove to us that you're licensed to do business in New York State. Either you have a DBA certificate, doing business as, which is very popular for small businesses, right? My name is Rafael Salaberrios. I can have a certificate, Rafael Salaberrios, doing business as Joe's Plumbing, right? That would be sufficient. Or if you are incorporated, your corporation documents. If you are a limited liability corporation, your LLC documents. Those are documents that you need to have in order to do business in New York State. Now, if you are a taxi driver, a gig worker, a 1099 independent contractor, you have documents, again, to show that your identification, your tax returns will have your Schedule C. Now, gig workers or Uber drivers, taxi drivers, you have to have a license, right? You cannot be an Uber driver without having the license or the identification that Uber gives you. So again, you may not have it at hand and you may have to find it, but we will help you with going through the documentation. But we don't think we're asking for anything that you should not have if you're a licensed individual to do business in New York State. If you are not a licensed individual to do business in New York State, you will not be able to get a grant.
So that's, I think, touches on the proof of business in, organization. Right. Now for location, I think, some of the things that you mentioned is two of the following documents: a lease, a right. utility bill, a bank statement, a mortgage statement, a credit card statement. If you pay for insurance, that works, or some sort of payment processing, statement. So I think those are things that you would probably have as a business. Certainly, at least one or two of those things. So I think it's important. Certainly, if you are paying taxes to the state, that proof of sales tax is also another clear indicator of qualifications, and a schedule of ownership.
I would say that though the thing that you most readily have, if you are a brick and mortars, right, you probably are paying for your utilities. You're probably paying for cable. So your cable bill and your Con Edison bill, you're good to go. As long as they're in the name of the business and it shows your address, you're good to go.
All right. And just to highlight that, there isn't a deadline to the program.
No.
Or is there? Okay.
The deadline is when we run out of money.
Exactly. So there you should get that in as quickly as possible. It's a rolling deadline. There's money there now. There's hundreds of millions available, but that might go away. And we hope it goes away as everybody starts to apply. And I think that's important for us to state. Right now we've done 3,000 grants for the micro lending small business category. We're hoping to ramp that up. We know we haven't tapped out of our small and micro businesses. We know the barbero on the corner hasn't heard about it yet. We know some of the restaurants out there, which we'll talk about, because some of them, might not be eligible and may be eligible for different programs. But we also know, the different, the different stores in our commercial corridors. I mean, I can think of so many ones. If you're talking about 116th Street or 3rd Avenue, some of the small businesses, hardware stores, you name it, are eligible. So I think our biggest challenge is kind of, one of the things that government don't do well all the time is marketing and advertising and getting it out there to people to know, that this is out there. So that's part of why we're here. Thank you, Ray, for being here. So I think that's kind of the big encouraging point is we need people to actually apply and pull together some of these things. Let's talk about, what's out there, or who are the folks that are eligible and who are the ones that are not eligible. I think one important thing that was mentioned about eligible businesses is, we are focusing on small businesses, some micro businesses, and talk a little bit about the preference for businesses in disadvantaged communities.
Well, I think that's an important point to bring up, Assemblyman, because we are prioritizing, New York State prioritizing socially and economically disadvantaged business owners, right? Including those that are located in distressed communities. All right. So when we get a bunch of applications in, the first thing we're going to look at is, okay, where are you located? Right. And to my friends in Scarsdale or Pelham Manor, where I used to live, you get your application in, we're going to look at you, but not before the guy that's on 116th Street and 3rd Avenue. The guy on 116th 3rd Avenue or the young lady on 116th 3rd Avenue will get priority to review the application over someone that's on 59th and Lexington. So that's a key point for us to realize that if you are in a distressed community throughout the state, you are getting prioritized over someone that's not in the distressed community. Prioritization meaning your application will be reviewed first. Because we knew that the federal government, through their Paycheck Protection Program, did not prioritize us. Right? It didn't look at the guy on East Harlem. Right? It really looked at the guys in the Midtown Manhattan first. So what we're trying to do is make sure that the folks in East Harlem, my own whole time, because I went to high school on 116th Street. I told you, many years ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I was in high school, 116th Street and Pleasant Avenue. So I know the community very well, and I know that we want to help the folks there. What we've also done is by expanding the revenue amount, we're not forgetting the folks that have the $500,000 in revenue or less. You should continue to apply. What we're trying to do now is expand the revenue so that the larger companies in our communities also have an opportunity to benefit from what we believe is a once in a lifetime, once generational type of initiative. There aren't too many times that New York State is going to offer $800 million in grants.
And I think that's an important distinction because we know we have the small micro businesses, but even just thinking about the 116 corridor, we've got some, small contractors. We have like the plumbing and electrical and the cabinetry guys who might have a little bit more than the 500,000 who were probably looking around saying, hey, my business has been impacted and, we want to be considered for something as well. So I think raising that limit was important. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about, what we can do for some other folks outside of that. Some of the folks that are not eligible are nonprofit organizations, right? There's kind of a different bucket for them. Churches and religious institutions, separation, church and state folks, that's an important distinction here when we talk about what your taxpayer dollars and federal dollars can go towards. No businesses that do lobbying or political work, anything like that. Restaurants is kind of an interesting case, and I think it's important to mention them, Ray, about the resources that have been provided for restaurants. There was a SBA Restaurant Revitalization Grant Program. If you could talk a little bit about that and how that is a better source for the restaurants at this point than this bucket, and how they go about accessing that program and what it does.
The SBA Restaurant Revitalization Grant Program is a lot more generous for a restaurant as opposed to what we're offering up to $50,000, because you really can get almost $500,000. You can get up to $500,000 in grant relief if you're depending on the size of your restaurant. Our friends at the federal government, sometimes navigating their programs is a challenge, right? But because we're providing technical assistance, we're going to say to you, if you go on the ESD website and you find a technical assistant advisor, that technical assistant advisor can also help you navigate through the federal restaurant revitalization program, because there's some nuances in it, and you probably need a webinar onto itself just to go over the particulars of the SBA Restaurant Revitalization Grant Program. Many folks are under the impression that they receive an EIDL loan, right, the Emergency Industry Disaster Loan, that they don't qualify. That is not correct. As long as you don't receive more than $10,000 grant from the EIDL, you don't qualify. But let me just point here. You cannot possibly receive a grant of $10,000 or more from EIDL. At one point you were able to, but now you're no longer. So if you received a loan from the Emergency Industry Disaster Loan Program, you are still eligible for the New York State Small Business Grant Program.
Even if you've received some assistance, it's worth applying and making sure that you're ineligible, because more likely than not, you're probably eligible.
Exactly. So I would be remiss if I did not mention New York State's Return to Work Restaurant Tax Credit Program. And that program is ongoing now. I have colleagues who are working on it. If you are a small business restaurant and you had to lay off some employees because of the pandemic, and now you want to rehire those employees, you can get up to $5,000 per employee that you rehire.
How do people get more information about the tax credit program and how to sign up for that?
I think the easiest thing to do is just people go onto the Empire State Development website.
Mhm.
It's all on there on the pandemic relief program. If you just type in Empire State Development, it'll come up. You navigate to pandemic relief programs, and then you'll see information about the small business grant program. You will see information about the return to work restaurant tax credit program, and a myriad of other programs that we have that help small business, that are trying to help small businesses get back on their feet.
Let's talk a little bit about that, Ray, because I just got off the phone, with a restaurant, but it could be any other businesses. We have a lot of brave folks who, were in the process of starting their businesses or opening their business during, and ended up doing so during COVID. And while they might not be eligible because of the start dates that we require, for the grant program, which is before March 1, 2019, or even in some cases, there's one business that I have that changed incorporation, longstanding business. They sold it to a son during COVID, so their paperwork is makes them ineligible because it happened in like October of 2020. What can we say or offer to those folks who are, trying to make it through and aren't eligible for the grant program? Do we have any low interest? Do we have any zero interest loans? What's out there for them?
Interesting, because when the pandemic hit, like 2020, the March 2020, we immediately thought, how are we going to help small businesses? It wasn't about grants. It was like, what type of loans can we offer them? So New York State really took the lead and offered a program that's now being mimicked throughout the country. So the New York Forward Loan Program was set up to help small businesses get loans at 3% up to $100,000. So in 1 year, during the pandemic, we've approved over $90 million in loans. These are all small loans. The average loan size was like $40,000. So we are in the process now of replenishing that fund, and there are still lenders who go there, and you can go to the New York Forward Loan Fund website and see what the availability is for funds. There is still some monies available. On the Empire State Development website, you're going to see a list of certified development financial institutions that we work with who are in our communities, who are ready to say yes. Empire State, my division, my team, we provide capital to these CDFIs and say to them, we want you to lend this out to these small individuals in these distressed communities at a low rate. New York State is at the forefront of assisting small businesses, whether it is having you get a loan with zero rate interest for the first 3 years, right? So you get a 5-year loan, first 3 years of zero rate interest, next 2 years, you pay interest rate. Right? And the interest rate's going to be below 5%.
Wow.
The idea, see, I can sit here all day. I know I don't have all day, so I won't. But if you think about the number of initiatives that we currently offer to help small businesses, it's staggering when you think about it. Whether you need help, whether you need to help to get your platform set up for e-commerce, right? If you are a small business and you're not engaged in e-commerce, I imagine you're probably missing the boat, because not all of us shop on Amazon, but people are using e-commerce to do a lot of their shopping. So we have, again, on the website, you'll see we have a program to help you with e-commerce. If you have issues and you need mentoring, we have a business mentor program. So individuals who may need some legal advice, but can't afford the $325 an hour, you go to our business mentor. We have lawyers who have agreed to help with advice. They won't practice law for you, but they'll tell you, you need this, you should have this.
Just give us a little bit of a success story. You've been doing this a long time with small businesses and micro businesses, and particularly working hard to get this program up and running. You know, can you share a success story from one of the partners and or a particular business that we've been able to get through the program and help out?
So I'll give you a good example. I grew up on Cypress Avenue, 138th Street, in that area. So I was driving the other day, happened to go by, and there I saw this small business. Let me go in there and get myself a cup of coffee. I went in and I talked to the person, just, hey, I told her what I do. And she said, oh, I could use a $15,000 loan, but no one's going to lend it to me. So here I am in my own neighborhood, right? And it's a $15,000 loan, which is not a lot of money, but to this person, this is what they needed to stay established. So I put them in contact directly with the CDFI. We helped manage that process. She got the loan. Now, she got it in 3 weeks. I'm not going to say I didn't help her get it, but she got it in 3 weeks, which is great for her. I have a Hispanic young lady, contracting firm in Brooklyn. I won't say your name, but she needed to get $1.2 million. We helped her with a $1.2 million loan. The list goes on and on, the kind of projects that we do to help small businesses. I normally give up my cell phone number, but I was told not to do that no more. So I am going to give up my office number so that as people view this video and they say, you know what, I need to ask this guy a question. My name is Rafael Salaberrios. My number is 212-803-3219. The good thing is, if you dial a number, you're going to reach me because that goes to my cell phone number. And the reason I'm doing this is because this is what I'd like to do, is to help small businesses. So what better way to help you than if you have a question that you need answered, call me directly. I will answer that question.
Thank you. And I know that to be true. And I want to remind the viewers, there are 3,000 success stories so far. We're not happy with that number. We want that number to go up because we know we have way more than 3,000 businesses across the state of New York. So we want that number to increase and we want to make many more success stories. So I hope this is helpful to providing really important information about programs that the state is offering right now to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic and help our small businesses get on their feet. And hopefully we'll have some additional information for you about another program for our restaurants where we talk about how they provide food for food insecure communities and get reimbursed by the state and the federal government for providing those meals. That's the next program that we're going to be rolling out in partnership with the state to help support our restaurant community. So we know that there's a lot of gaps to fill and we are working hard to do that. And I want to thank Ray and his team and the folks at Empire State for doing what they do and turning it up a notch and another notch because really this is to help all of New York get back on their feet and help us all get back to where we want to be.